Hello everyone. This is the second post I've published in this subreddit. Lately I've been getting into the habit of reading the latest posts on ghost stories before going to bed. Yesterday my wife, seeing me absorb in these stories before bed, asked me what I was reading. When I explained it to her, she says, "It reminds me of the story I told you. The one when I was still in high school with my grandmother." I didn't remember her story at all, but she refreshed my memory, and after listening to the story, I asked her if I could share her story on Reddit, which she accepted. So to sum it up, my wife and I are from the Horn of Africa, and a lot of things that I read on this subreddit are very present in our culture. Whether it's men, women turning into hyenas at night, people living with spirits surrounding them, etc., etc. I don't believe in these stories at all, even though I myself have seen some very strange things. See a post I had already shared, and thanks to you, I found out that I saw two shadow persons one night when I was coming home. So, to tell you my wife's story, I'm going to write it in the first person, because it's more convenient for me. I was still in high school at the time, and my grandmother often came to visit us at home. As usual, she often came to talk to my mother about things in general. All I remember is that every Thursday she would hold a coffee ceremony with my mom, which is very common in our culture. Surprisingly, I never asked myself this question before traveling abroad, but it's true that our coffee ceremonies, not only ours at home but in our country in general, are very much like a kind of religious ritual. We roast the coffee, we put a lot of incense so that the room is filled with smoke, and often we recite prayers. It is often said that it cleans and purifies your home. That day I stayed with my grandmother and my mother in the room where they were holding the coffee ceremony. I listened to them talk, and out of tiredness I started to doze off, my head resting right next to my grandmother. After a while, my mother and grandmother stopped talking, and I felt that something was happening around me. I was wide awake, but I didn't want to show it. I don't know why, but I pretended I was still asleep. After a while, I heard my grandmother speaking, but it wasn't her. It was a very husky and masculine voice. For those who know grandmother, it's very strange. My grandmother, or whoever had taken her place, greeted my mother, and my mother replied with a lot of respect, but above all, a lot of naturalness. At that time, I had problems with my tonsils, and my mother was very worried. She asked the spirit if I was going to recover from my tonsil problems, and the spirit told her not to worry, that everything would be fine. It's strange, because my mother used to address my grandmother in the plural, as if she was talking to several people. Several people. She spent at least 20 minutes asking all sorts of questions, which my grandmother answered. The spirits possessing my grandmother finally warned my mother that my grandmother was not doing as they commanded, and that this was why she was in poor health. They told my mother that my grandmother must never miss the Thursday coffee ceremonies once, or she would have to pay the consequences. I'm guessing her health. After 20 to 30 minutes, my grandmother came to her senses and asked my mother what they said. My mother told her that she had to follow what they told her to do in order to stay healthy. All the while, I was petrified and didn't want to show that I was awake. Back to me now. I was talking to my wife about this last night. I still say I don't believe in these stories in general, even though it's amazing that stories like skinwalkers are so prevalent in our culture. It was common knowledge that a neighbor turned into a hyena some nights, and many other stories about people you meet every day but spend some nights in the middle of wild animals, or people living with spirits. even with spirits manifesting themselves in front of you, etc. Finally, to conclude, I think that what happens with the grandmother in question is a possession that we call czar in our country. Basically, some people live with spirits inside them that give them orders in order to appease the spirits. For some spirit, it is to read biblical verses every night. For others, it is to do a coffee ceremony every week. The most amazing thing about my wife's story is that it's completely integrated into the culture, and that people even seek advice from these spirits who possesses people. By the way, the funny thing is that my mother is possessed by this type of spirit as well. For her, she also has to organize a coffee ceremony, but only once a year when she makes an animal sacrifice, usually sheep or chicken, and she is dressed entirely in red from dawn to dusk. I know it's super weird, but I come from a very traditional country. For us, it is totally normal. I'm not even sharing here the crazy things my mom would do or say about paranormal things. Don't hesitate to ask me questions if you want to know more, or to tell me what you know about this kind of phenomena. I am super curious about your opinions. Hi everyone, it's Curious Raven. I wanted to say sorry that this is only one story. My next video will have a lot more. This one was long and very interesting. It was different than the normal paranormal stories. If you think skinwalkers are real, let me know in the comments. If you ever want me to do a skinwalker video, let me know in the comments. But until then, remember, it's scary out there.